Go.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Onside Podcast. And this is the show that this is the show that we're taking a look at innovation-driven entrepreneurship here in Canada and here in Nova Scotia. And we're taking a look this season, which is actually our season 4. We're taking a look at women entrepreneurs and change makers across the country who are really making Canada more inclusive, our startup ecosystem more dynamic, everything from folks in tech, manufacturing to wellness and education. And we're so excited to have everybody here joining us today. These fireside chats are being brought to you as part of our Onside Start Now Incubator project, which supports diverse and intersectional women across Canada to grow and start their businesses. And we're receiving some funding through the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy to do that. As I mentioned, this is our 4th season, and this is our first episode of the season. So we're so excited to be welcoming Avery Swartz, the CEO and founder of Camp Tech, to the show. And I'm going to give you a little bit of her background before we jump in. Avery is a tech educator, author, and entrepreneur dedicated to making technology more approachable and inclusive. She founded Camp Tech, a training company that helps small businesses, not-for-profits, and entrepreneurs feel much more confident in using digital tools. Avery is also the author of See You on the Internet, Building Your Small Business with Digital Marketing, a trusted media voice here in Canada on all things digital. And she's here today to talk about entrepreneurship, the impact of AI, and how women in business can leverage tech to grow their businesses with confidence and sustainability. So, Avery, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Yes, I'm super excited as well. And the other thing I also wanted to mention, which we'll talk about a little bit later, is that Onsite is so excited to be able to partner with Camp Tech to bring a live in-person AI skills lab to Halifax starting in June. So anyone who's thinking about that, we'll leave some information at the end of the show, and you can come to the website and learn how to sign up for that. So we're giving a quick plug at the beginning in case anyone's thinking about it. But Avery, thanks so much for joining us. So excited that you took some time out of your busy day, because you're a very busy person. But why don't we get started? And let's start at the beginning with your journey and hear a little bit about where you come from and what inspired you to start Camp Tech.
So, I mean, if you go back far enough to when I was like a teenager in the early 90s, I've always been somebody that really enjoys math and science. And I also really, really, really love art.
Mm.
And so I did that thing that we make kids do, which is kind of awful, which is you kind of get pigeoned into one area. So when I went to university and when I first started my career in my 20s, I actually worked in the arts. I have a fine arts degree. I went to theater school. I worked as an arts administrator. I kind of like left my very nerdy side behind me. And then it came back after I worked in the arts for theater companies in Toronto. I'm not an actor. I was not on stage. I worked as part of the team that helped bring theater to the stage. It was in my kind of like late 20s when I thought, I'm interested in maybe doing something a little bit different from this. Frankly, the lifestyle, it was a lot of fun, but not a lot of money. I was burning out. And I thought, I want to get tapped back into some stuff I really enjoyed, which particularly was design, but also stuff that's a little bit nerdy. And so I went back to school and I did a design certificate program. And this is in like the early 2000s. So I was learning graphic design, but also I was learning web design. And
Mm.
that's the thing that hooked me. It was the perfect match of my artistic design skills and sensibilities and got me back into that kind of nerdy math science stuff that I loved because I was writing code. And so that's when my entrepreneurship journey started. I came out of design school and I said, you know what? I want to start my own little design studio. And it really was little. It was just me, and then partnering up with a few people on projects. And I was making websites and did that for, I don't know, close to 10 years. And I noticed something. This is in Toronto in gosh, it feels like forever ago, but it was like 2010, 2011, 2012. A lot of the people that I was making websites for, small businesses, nonprofits, entrepreneurs, really mission driven, heart centered people, they asked me, "Hey, Avery, thanks so much for the help with the website, but where can I go to learn more about, you know, email marketing? Where, like, do I need a Twitter?" That sort of stuff. And I said, well, I started to look around. And frankly, in Toronto in late 2011, early 2012, there was nowhere for them to go. They
Mm.
could have gone to a community college and done a, 16-week program to become a marketer. They could have, like, this, even like YouTube online learning wasn't really so much of a thing then. Or they would just say they couldn't learn it themselves. They either had to, mutter through and figure it out, or they had to hire someone. And so I thought, you know what, this is interesting. I've got myself and some of my nerdy friends. We can literally order a pizza, book a small room, like a boardroom, just pay by the hour, and we can just like do a little kind of workshop. And we started doing it. Every time we would do one, it sold out, and it sold out right away. And
Mm.
that's when I went, holy guacamole, this is a business, and this is a scalable business. Because you got to remember, art school. I don't know anything about business. I went to art school. So that's when I really thought, wait a minute, this is something I could do. And then here we are 13 years later, and I'm still doing it. So,
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I love, we always talk about STEM, but I really think there's that STEAM with the arts
yeah,
in there.
for
And
sure.
we're so lucky here in Halifax. We've got NASCAD, which is a great arts college.
Yes.
Getting those brains, those creative problem solver types. Yeah, that's so interesting. And so you kind of came into it sort of, I don't want to say accidentally, but just wasn't it was a bit of a circuitous route. And
Yeah.
and when you were thinking about starting up Camp Tech, like what did you find that was like kind of missing? Like what was the gap that you were saying all these people were showing up and you were kind of surprised, but why were they showing up? What was missing? And then what was your, I don't know, say
Yeah.
special sauce that you felt like you were offering them that was missing at the time?
So what was definitely missing was what I call like accessible. And
Mhm.
accessible is a word that can mean many different things to many different people in many different contexts. But in this particular context, this was the training that we were offering was short. It was usually 2 or 3 hours, not 2 or 3 months. It was in a location, like kind of like downtown Toronto, relatively accessible. It was low cost. Like all of our workshops were under $100, and it was very, very practical. It
Mhm.
wasn't teaching you to become, a marketer. It was more teaching you just what you needed to know to do the job you already have. Kind of like a like learn it on Tuesday, use it on Wednesday sort of skills. What I didn't know at the time is that that's an entire style of training called upskilling. But
Mhm.
I don't even think the word upskilling like was in our vernacular back then. It was just an instinct that this is the kind of thing that people wanted. And it was again, I didn't know any of this vocabulary back then, but the idea of like a minimum viable product, like being able to put something out in a market and test it, it was a relatively easy thing for me to spin up. The only like I didn't have investors or anything. I was bootstrapped because there wasn't really any cost. There was renting a room, ordering a pizza, um, scamming a projector from somebody that I know, asking a friend if they could come, and I'd give them like $100 to like just kind of teach people what they know. It was so grassroots and so
Mhm.
simple to just like put something out, see if it would sell, and then as the company grew, and then eventually became quite large and started to do more and more stuff. But it was really easy to kind of test that initial assumption that maybe there was a desire for this product slash service.
Mhm, mhm. And when you started out the company, it sounds like you were, like, pretty scrappy, testing it out, creating your MVP,
Yeah,
even if you didn't kind of, know those words.
yeah.
When and it sounded like you instantaneously had kind of customers or, folks coming in. When did you decide, "Okay, like, I'm gonna just do this full time?" Was there, like, a moment you were like, "Okay, I paid somebody $100 and that worked out good. That, I got the borrowed projector and, things like
Yeah.
that. When did you
Yeah.
decide like, okay, I think I can like actually keep this going?
So for a while, I was running two businesses concurrently. So I was still running a web studio where I was doing client work and making websites for people. And then I called it the training company, was on the side. And I honestly thought if you had asked me back in 2012, 2013, I would have thought that that's the way it would always be, that the training company was just a little kind of a side hustle. And it was within 2 years of just responding to demand, running more regular trainings, and again, iterative. It would be, and this is the thing, it's like never stop asking your customers questions. After somebody would come for a training, but what else do you want to learn? What did you like about it? What more would you like to learn from us? Like just always iterating, always asking what people wanted more of. So someone said, oh, well, we would love to do a workshop on SEO. Okay, we can spin that up. A month later, we had a workshop on SEO. Then it was, I'm wondering, do you have a workshop on Google Analytics? I'm like, not yet, but we can. Spun up a workshop on Google Analytics. So it's when I stopped running the web design studio, when I found that the thing that got me in the end was that I couldn't keep up on code. I couldn't
Mhm.
keep up on the latest developments in how people were writing code to build websites. And I was working with some developers and they were like, Avery, we love you, but your code is getting pretty janky. Like, we don't do that anymore. We do this over here. And that's why I was like, dang it. And that was a real moment for me. And I think especially any entrepreneur that knows what it feels like to go from being more of a doer to being more of an owner, boss, operator. Um, I had a real moment of almost like a sadness of like,
Mm.
well, if I don't write code, if I'm not a builder, if I'm not a doer, then what am I really doing? But then at the end of the day, I found that being the person that makes the business decisions and is able to strategize and figure out what we want to do with business, that in its own way is just as creative as design work. So it
Mhm.
still gets at that point in my brain.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it sounds like you had a mental shift, or you would like a pivot, a leadership shift from like
Yeah.
being the sometimes we would say around here we would say working in the business, doing the code, which
Yeah.
I can get deep into a spreadsheet and I love it, and you're just like deep
Yeah.
down there, and you're like lost. Time is moving, you don't even notice it, and then hours later, it's like it's a whole thing. But it is a bit of a mind shift to change and to say, okay, I'm going to maybe lean into some other skills or other areas where I have some strengths that maybe I wasn't doing that before. Did you feel like it was a bit of a leadership shift when you did that?
Yeah, for sure. And yes, that like, am I working in the business versus working on the business? Um, and also like that's where like working on the business is an area that I had no training, no formal and any sense of I'm not even kidding, Alexandra. I bought a like business for dummies books because I didn't know anything. I had a friend that has an MBA and I started asking her questions. I'm like, what is the difference between a corporation and a sole proprietorship? And she was like, oh dear, you need to sit down. Like, just and that's where again, like in those moments, that's where I turned to organizations. Like I wasn't with Onside, but organizations such as Onside, where it was like business networking, business support, business mentorship. I learned everything I know about how to run a business and all the mistakes that I've made along the way through learning from other people. It's a practical MBA, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think, that's what we do here at Onsite. And there are many other organizations that are focused on that and really want to see entrepreneurs thrive and get those skills. So just for our audience that may not be as familiar with Camp Tech, can you describe a little bit about some of the things that you do at Camp Tech and maybe talk a little bit about how the work that you're doing sort of maybe connects to your personal aspirations around trying to help entrepreneurs, women, all kinds of folks, get into tech or you were talking about it being accessible. So tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about Camp Tech, like what you do, and how does that
Yeah.
connect to your your soul?
Yeah. So I have this thing, and I think a lot of it again comes from lived experience. I am a woman, I am in my mid 40s, I am a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister. Like I am the kind of person that you don't always see in tech spheres, unfortunately. But I can talk tech and code and nerdy stuff with the best of them. But one thing that I found, even before I started the training company, even when I was working as a coder, um, there's this thing that happens where people, and it tends to be the kind of the dominant majority, it tends to be more like white cis heterosexual men that can use technology as a power trip over
Mm,
other people. We have a real issue with technology creating a gap
mm,
that tends to align with socioeconomic divides, and the use of technology can further entrench those divides. And so we know, not just in terms of who's making technology, but also who adopts technology, that marginalized genders, marginalized people are less likely to use the very technology that could help them to
mm,
grow. Uh, and so I used to see, not in my company, because I would never allow this at Camp Tech, but I would see in other situations, mostly, again, white, heterosexual, cisgendered men talking down to
mm,
marginalized genders, talking down to marginalized people without even necessarily knowing it, in the context of like how you use technology. And I thought, hold on a second. No, this is not okay with me, because to me, education is built on respect, and it's a two-way street. Somebody that wants to learn from myself or my colleagues, they hopefully respect that we have some expertise in the area. But I equally respect their expertise in their area. So I would see people coming out to Camp Tech workshops, and they'd be like, "Oh, Avery, I don't know." They'd say things like, "I'm so dumb when it comes to computers," or "I'm so stupid," and I'd be like, "No, no, no, you just did the flowers for a wedding for a celebrity. Like, you're not dumb or stupid. You have this amazing ability. I'm good at computers. Don't ask me to do an oil change. Like, we all have our things that we're good at, right?" And so it really irked me when people that are due a large amount of respect for their professional abilities were not being seen for that. So in the context of learning, in the context of wanting to again help play a small part in bridging that gap, in bridging that divide between the people that have technology and are using it to grow bigger companies, do bigger stuff, and those that don't know how to wield it, I was like, that's where I'm going to insert myself,
mm,
because I've got this one part of me that's a little bit in that world and knows, like, I know how they do things, and then I can kind of steal it and take it over here and share it with other people. And frankly, that's what Camp Tech does. The way that we do it is through really practical tech education, and these days that means it's a lot of AI education,
mm,
because in the last couple of years, with the rise of generative AI tools like ChatGPT, you no longer have to be a computer scientist to be able to use artificial intelligence and kind of mold it to what you want it to do. Now there's a beautiful moment where AI really can help, and we have all this data that shows that when you harness generative artificial intelligence in a business, you can increase productivity, you can build capacity, you can do so much more. That is a wonderful moment, and I want to make sure that people aren't left behind
mm.
in that revolution. Of course, with all of those benefits, there also comes a lot of risk. There's a lot of concern around AI. So not only am I like, I'm not an AI hype girl. I'm not here to just be like, rah, 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 everybody needs to use I see the potential. I also see the risk. And I want to do everything we can to help people try and reap the rewards, but still adopt AI ethically
Mm.
in a way that aligns with their values.
I love that. I love that. Well, I think it's you raise a really good point, and I know we're going to get into some tips and
Mhm.
tricks and things like that a little bit later on. But it's an ongoing conversation around those who are able to benefit from all of this innovation and access to AI or digital tools or any kind of tools, and those who don't. And we do see it, we do a lot of work with women entrepreneurs and other underserved communities. And those that are unable to, or just not as comfortable, or feel like, oh, this is for Silicon, Valley tech bros. This is not really for me. I just run, a small business, or I'm a consultant, or actually I have a, very profitable business, but I don't see the need. And then when those folks, feel intimidated, they don't adopt these kinds of new technologies, and it's moving so quickly. People are starting to fall further and further behind and get more intimidated. In fact, actually, it's very timely. Just before I joined the podcast today, I was in a AI workshop, so we were
Love it.
yeah. I was like, with my team, we have a small team. We're like, just give it a try, see
Yeah.
how it is. I mean, we're not doing brain surgery over here. We're, playing around with technology and seeing what it can do for us. But, making sure that people don't get left on the sidelines while there's opportunity and potentially benefits. Watch out for some of the pitfalls that are there.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a really important moment where we make sure that we don't leave people behind, because they will get further and further and further behind. Yeah.
For sure. There's
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly who it's. I believe it's a science fiction writer. There's a quote that's been circulating. It's been circulating for a while, but it really applies to this moment. That said, "The future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed."
Yes. Yes.
And like, if anything kind of sums up my mission, what I'm trying to do, because I could go and get a job at one of the big tech companies, and I could make a lot more money than I am right now. But it's knowing that there are people out there that have this knowledge, that have this ability, and they're not making the best choices with it, if we're being honest. They're not always doing, things that I would necessarily agree with. So instead, let's make it a little bit more open, a little bit more accessible. And it just so happens that's also what I'm pretty good at. And it's
Mhm.
also where I have the most fun, because I
Yeah.
really like to just have fun at work. And I like to talk to people and teach and help them learn. It means that at the end of the day, I can, have my head hit the pillow and think, yeah, for
Yeah.
the most part, today was a good day.
Today was a good day. I did some good things. We talked a little bit, about, people being left behind, and, diverse genders and people
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. What has it been like for you, building Camp Tech and being a woman in a, tech space? What has that been like? And have there been any moments that you said, wow, I'm really proud about this moment. I'm really proud about where I've landed or done?
So So I've done a few things. So I run Camp Tech. That's my main job. But I also do some work in the media, because I really, again, like, I want to be able to reach a broader demographic when it comes to talking about technology. And sometimes that literally comes down to, like, literally who you see on TV talking about something might interest you. So I do some work as a tech correspondent for the media. So I would say, without a doubt, one of the coolest experiences I had, that was a real, like, pinch me kind of moment, was oh god, this is gonna make me sound really old, but, like, what even year was this? This was, like, at least 7, maybe 8 years ago. I was broadcasting live for Canadian media on the East Coast. I was broadcasting live from Apple Park in Cupertino, when Apple Park opened. So Apple Park is that big spaceship building that is the headquarters for Apple in Cupertino in California. And I was on a stage as the sun was coming up. It was like a media stage with Apple Park behind us. The sun was coming up, and it was a lineup of, like, literally right next to me was, like, CNN, and on the other side was like ABC, and I was broadcasting for CTV in Canada. And the funny thing is, I should have rethought my outfit, because I was wearing a dress, which meant that my mic pack had to literally be in my underwear in order to, like, have my microphone and everything all hooked up with my earpiece and stuff. But that was a really cool moment. And like, not only do you not see a lot of women in tech in general, but you definitely don't see a lot of women in tech media. Like
Mm.
everybody at those media events, it's just like a sea of plaid. These guys in their plaid shirts. But here's one good thing about going to tech media events as a woman. It's one of the only situations in my life where the lineup for the ladies' bathroom is not a problem. like, like you just walk right in, not a big deal. Where the lineup for the men's bathroom is like down around the hall.
Small perks. You got to take the small
Yeah,
perks wherever you can. You got to take the small perks. Okay, I
totally.
wasn't thinking that's where you're going to go, but
Yeah,
hey, let's take it.
microphones in my underwear and going to the bathroom. This is the
Yeah.
reality, right?
This is the reality of being a woman in tech and tech
Yeah,
media in particular. Got it.
totally.
Got it. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Well, let's talk a little bit about some practical things because
Mhm.
Camp Tech, you're really trying to even out the playing field by providing opportunities for accessing technology, getting comfortable with technology, whether it's AI or other kinds of systems and things like that. And right now, AI is a big kind of like buzzword that is out there. Like,
Yeah.
how are you seeing AI show up, for you at Camp Tech?
Oh gosh, there is so much hype out there, and so much of it is nonsense. So the very first thing I want to say to anybody who's watching or listening is you're not too late. There can be this feeling of like, oh gosh, I need to catch up. You're not too. There is no one on the planet who knows how to use ChatGPT for anything longer than 2.5 years. Like, it's all so new. We're all figuring it out together. And best practices don't exist. They're starting to just emerge from anecdotes. So at Camp Tech, I try and use myself as the testing ground for then like what we turn around and teach. So we're a really small team. There are 2 full-time staff members at Camp Tech and about 15 contractors. So for the small team, we use AI tools a lot. I am an early adopter. I love to just mess around with tools and see what's possible. I regularly on the generative AI side, I regularly use ChatGPT and Claude. Like multiple times a day. And then also the AI tools that are inside Canva,
Mm.
that graphic design tool that many of us use to create our marketing materials. Um, and then there's a few other, also AI assistants. Like I always bring a robot with me to every meeting. I'm like, oh, come on, little robot, let's go. I always bring my AI assistant to every meeting to like create a transcript. And then I take the transcript and I put it into ChatGPT and I start asking questions about the meeting and for it to summarize things for me. And the thing about generative AI, this is not what GPT stands for in ChatGPT. It's just kind of ironic that it's the same acronym. But most generative AI technology today is a general purpose technology. It is not unlike the internet or even electricity. It is a type of technology that can be applied to any scenario. Many of us saw ChatGPT and we thought, oh, well, this will help us with our content creation. It will help us develop our marketing materials, help us write our email newsletters, our social media posts. And it absolutely can do that. But it can also do so much more. And
Mm.
that's what I'm seeing a lot of businesses are starting to really kind of wake up to. This idea that ChatGPT can also help you with business planning. It can also help you do, some analysis. It can also help you do looking at a customer segmentation. It can also help you. I was literally talking with ChatGPT this morning, preparing a sales proposal for a client, and I asked ChatGPT to help me come up to brainstorm some ideas for a value add. For
Mm.
just like something else I could throw in the proposal that the client didn't even think to ask for, but we could just kind of be like, hey, we could add that on. Would you like that? And more often than not, that stuff kind of works. So it was a really interesting conversation to go back and forth with ChatGPT because it suggested one thing. And I was like, no, that is not a good idea. But then it suggested something else. I'm like, ooh, and then we went back and forth a few times. So it's not just how to use the tool that we teach in our workshops at Camp Tech. The real thing that we teach and through a program like the Early AI Adoption Lab, we're really teaching mindset. We're teaching
Mm.
how to think about bringing a tool in more frequently, not just in a one-off task, but when and where can you bring a tool in to a workflow? Because that's when you can really unlock like supercharge powers, but
Mm.
also ethically and safely and all that good stuff.
Mm. What's your you're saying you have your morning chat with ChatGPT on a daily basis. Are there and you mentioned I think Claude and a few others. Are there any tools that you're like loving right now or really vibing with that you think people should check out?
So a few that I've played around with that are kind of funky. So I've played with all types of generative AI. So the type of generative AI that can make text, so like ChatGPT, etc. The kind that can make images. If people want to make images, the new image maker inside ChatGPT is way better than it used to be. Another one that does a really good job making images is called Midjourney. I for a presentation, I created a whole bunch of images and tried to get people to spot the AI,
Mm.
and no one in the room could tell what was like. Nobody got 100% perfect
Oh,
score on Spot
scary.
the AI, right? It was kind of weird. I also use tools. I've experimented a bit with the video making tools. They're not quite there yet. They're still a bit janky, but I've made video translations using a tool called HeyGen, and I've also done videos using a tool called Runway, and it's getting better. Um, I've played with making AI songs. I do that with my kid actually, and it's kind of fun. We use tools that make AI songs. One in particular I use is called Udio. It's like the word audio, but take the A off the front, so it's Udio. But the one that I've had the most fun with recently is this concept called vibe coding.
Mm.
So, vibe coding is generative AI to write code. And you got to remember, I have a background as a coder, so this interests me. But it's to write code to create a prototype. So what you do is you have a conversation. So just like a conversation you'd have with ChatGPT, you don't have to have any technical knowledge. You never have to look at a line of code. You just start with a conversation. So I vibe coded an app again for my kid. Gave me this idea. My kid's a teenager and doesn't like to wear a coat. Like, and so this was like, like I think a lot of teenagers from coast to coast across Canada, they don't like to wear jackets. I don't know what it's a thing. Um, so I noticed that every freaking morning, my kid would go out the door and they'd say, "Mom, do I need a coat?" And I'd be like, "Check the weather app. Go outside. Let me know. Like, do you figure it out for yourself? Do you need a coat?" And so I'm like, wait a minute. This could be my adventure into vibe coding. So I used a tool called Lovable, and I started a conversation. It's literally just a typey, conversation. And I started by saying, I want to create an app that tells a teenager in Toronto whether they need to wear a coat that day or not.
I love it.
And then it started going, oh, okay, we could do that by pulling publicly available weather data. We could pull it in, and it could say the temperature, and then it could decide based on kind of like a rubric whether somebody needs a coat or not. And it just started making it. It started building a prototype, and
Wow.
then it gave me the prototype, and then we started iterating by going back and forth again in the conversation. Because at first it was saying things like, if it's 15 degrees, you need a coat. And so I wrote, and I was like, no, this kid would not wear a coat in 15 degrees. They'd wear a hoodie. And then all of a sudden it wrote the code to like refine. It would be like, okay, well, if it's between 10 to 15 degrees, do not suggest a coat, suggest a hoodie instead. And the wild thing is, like, I just went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and added emojis and added, different features. And I never touched a line of code. So that whole concept of creating an app, a prototype through generative AI, through a conversation, is known in the tech industry. It's known as vibe coding, because it's the idea that you're just kind of like, you're coding, but you're coding based on vibes. And it ended up making this web app that is on it's a website. I'll send it to you if you want to see it.
Yeah.
My kid ended up sending it to all their friends, and now all their friends check it every morning.
I love this. I get the same. I'm like, that is genius. Because the kids, like, they go out and they're always like, do I need a coat? And do I
Right?
need mittens? And I'm like, we live in Canada. Like,
Yeah.
probably 70% of the time you need a coat. Like,
Right.
just take one.
Yeah. And then I shared it online, and people started reaching out, and they said, well, could you make it so that it works for my area? Could you make it so that it's, do I need sunscreen? Do I need shorts? Do I need to, so on and so on and so on. And I was like, I could, but you could too.
Uh,
So that's when I said, you make it for your area, because there was no technical knowledge required. It was literally just conversation.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm getting all kinds of ideas, like
Yeah.
the clean the dishes reminder, or
Yes.
like the vacuum. The what I really need is the walk the dog. When does the dog?
Oh,
Even though, because I'm that person who's like, there's three people. I'm like, can somebody walk the dog? The dog needs to be walked. Why is this a surprise? We need that.
yep.
I'm gonna vibe code a app that tells my children like when to walk the dog,
I
because
love
for
it.
some reason they can't figure that
I love
out.
it. And Alex, what just happened right here is what happens in our workshops. And this is what needs to happen more and more and more with AI. People don't know what's possible until they hear somebody else talk about it.
Mhm.
And then when they hear a use case and they hear somebody say, like, oh, I vibe coded an app to tell my kid whether she needs a coat, like, then somebody goes, oh, wait, maybe I could vibe code an app about, did we turn on the alarm system at the store today, or, whatever it might be. But it's a real chicken and egg thing, right? And I find this a lot with small businesses. They know that AI tools are out there, but they don't know how they can help.
Mhm.
So they need to hear about how somebody else has used it, to then they go, oh, I could do that. And then they do it, and then they talk about it, and then somebody else hears from them. So one of the key things we do in our training that has nothing to do with technical and has everything to do with just behaviors and building habits, we do show and tell every week, because people just need to hear just anecdotally and then ask questions and figure it out. Like, it's a key part of learning that has nothing to do with the tech, but it's everything about the humans and building habits.
I love it. We actually have a show and tell at our Start Now incubator. It's we call it, and we're like, it's not about pitching, it's about showcasing your business. We actually, a lot of folks who we had running a course with a group called Jelly Social, and they have a jelly bot,
Yeah.
and they
Nice.
help people develop a brand narrative using AI. And then they do that, and then they come to our show and tell, and they showcase what they're doing and just kind of talk, and then people start getting back and forth. But it's that yeah, getting the human element like
I
back together.
love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. So
Um,
we were thinking like, what did you do in kindergarten or primary? It's like show and tell. It's kind of
yeah,
like, let's get back to that. Let's get
totally. Totally.
back to the basics. So
Yeah.
I have a question, because you were talking about people learning and getting exposure, and what you do in your workshops at Camp Tech. And one of the things we're the workshop that we're going to be doing in a couple of weeks in Halifax is really focused on women entrepreneurs. But what are some, like, how should people be thinking about, especially for women entrepreneurs, how can people be thinking about how AI can help them improve their productivity, and like, why is that helpful or useful or important?
Yeah, sure. So, um, this is a gross, like, generalization, but and I believe there is probably some data that backs this up. I believe I've seen some from the Women's Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, that women entrepreneurs tend to have smaller organizations, which means that they have less headcount, less people to do everything. So I know even in my women-led small business, I will be writing emails that I probably shouldn't be writing. I will be doing admin tasks that I probably shouldn't be doing. It's low-hanging fruit. It's the kind of stuff that I can pretty easily, just send off to a bot to do. But the key thing about generative AI is that you always have to have a moment where you check it. You always have to be checking its work. You have to verify its accuracy. So anything that is repetitive, anything that you find you do more than once, anything that you can kind of turn into even just a little mini, kind of like a standard operating procedure. It'll be like, we do this step, then this step, then this step. All of those situations are ripe for AI and automation.
Mhm.
At first, it's slow to build out a system, but the whole point of systems is you go slow so then you can go fast once you have systems and workflows and stuff. So, um, I mean, the perfect example that I tend to go to, again, in my work as an entrepreneur, is this idea of oftentimes when I have a call or when I'm talking to a prospect or to a team member or what have you, I will either record it with an AI assistant and then have a transcript, or I will just take my thoughts from that and I get that into ChatGPT as fast as I can. Now I pay for ChatGPT because it has better security on the paid plan, and I go into my settings and I turn off the ability for ChatGPT to learn from my prompts and have that, go into the training material. I turn all that off because that's a data security thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll pull some information into ChatGPT and then I will ask it to, summarize for me. I will ask it to turn whatever it is we're talking about into bullet points. I'll ask you to turn it into a brief. I'll ask you to turn it into a sales proposal, whatever it is that, and that will easily save me a couple of hours right there. The other thing that I often do, and I encourage people to play around with this, it's a little weird at first, but ChatGPT has voice mode. You can do it on the website. You can also do it on the app if you have the app on your phone, where you can literally talk to it. So maybe like when you're on your dog walks, you just talk to ChatGPT and you say, hey, here's everything I'm thinking about today for this upcoming program or a product I'm thinking of launching, or how I want to respond to that customer service inquiry that came in. And you just you just kind of like just dump all your thoughts into it. And then ask ChatGPT to clean it up for spelling, grammar, and general readability. And it can do a beautiful job with that. And then right there, that saved you from, the time of having to sit and organize your thoughts and type it out and make it cohesive. Like those little lifts are great. And then that's what usually gets people into the idea of then going, oh, what else can it do? And then go even deeper.
Oh my God, that's so awesome. Well, I'm so excited about our upcoming program, which will be in June here in Halifax, the AI Skills Lab. So I encourage everybody to check it out. For a quick takeaway, because we're going to wrap it up here, what is the thing that you're most excited about related to AI for women?
Oh, that's a good one.
So many things.
I know there are so many things. Women entrepreneurs or women in general?
Your call, whichever
Okay.
one you feel like. We talked a lot
I mean,
about women entrepreneurs. I feel like all women are entrepreneurs, to be honest.
yeah, yeah, right. I am very, very interested in again, this idea of democratization potential, of being able to take a lot of stuff off your plate so that you can, again, like I said, I do think that business and business strategy can be very, very creative. I like having, with proper guardrails in place, having generative AI as almost like a business partner
Mm.
without actually needing to like go and get a business partner that might be a man or a VC or a bank manager or somebody telling you what to do. Instead, there's so much you can tap into in terms of business knowledge, and being able to figure out and work through what it is that you want. One of my favorite things you can do with a tool like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or any of these, and this is unlike any other type of software we've ever had before, is you can go to it and you can literally say, I need help and I don't even know how you can help.
Mhm.
And that can be your starting point. Just be like, and to say like, can you, meaning the robot, can you ask me questions to help guide me through getting to where I want to go?
Mm.
Like it's a bit of like a flip of the mind to be like, you don't have to have all the answers. You can get the tool to ask you the questions to eventually discover the answers, which is such a powerful unlock.
I love it. I love it. So, Avery, if people want to learn more about Camp Tech or our upcoming program, how can people learn more about you and Camp Tech? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so Camp Tech is, camptech.ca. I'm Avery Swartz. I got that name on lockdown on the internet. It's basically like you Google it and you're going to get me. But the program is really what we want people to check out. And it's at aiskillslab.ca. So we do have this. We're gonna jam into the month of June. We're gonna get some really good learning happening across 5 in-person workshops in Halley at Dalhousie. But for those that can't make the program in June because you have a life and you have other things going on, or it doesn't, or maybe you're a little bit too far away geographically, we are also doing an online cohort. And so there's an online cohort coming up in September and October. Now you got to wait until after the summer. So I suggest, get on it right away. Join us in June. But that's all at aiskillslab.ca. And it's a completely free program for training and support.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Avery, I'm so glad that you joined us here today. I love your energy and your enthusiasm about all things tech and AI. I'm really looking forward to June for this reason. And I would just say for anyone who was listening today, check out the website. Also, you can learn more on the Onside website, onsidenow.ca. And you can also check out some programs from the Start Now Incubator at startnowincubator.ca. Thanks so much, everybody, and we will see you next time.